Hi and welcome to part 2 of this DCP Web Blender 2.8 beginners tutorial. So we're going to continue with like our glass shader, particle simulation, flying camera, all this good stuff. So we've so far built this scene called alien text. If we click on it we can see what we see here, and we'll go to the render view here and we'll go back to our layout here, and let's click render here as well. We can kind of see where our camera is going to start, and the first thing we really want to do is fly this camera through this scene. So I want around 600 frames to start with, and divide that by 60 frames gives us simply 10 seconds of animation, right? So we set the end frame here to 600, and it may actually be a little bit longer than that. And to see all 600 frames we need to roll our mouse wheel downwards. So move your mouse over the timeline and roll it downwards, and then you can middle mouse click and drag it towards the center and then roll it upwards, and you want to see frame 1 here and frame 600 here. So just keep moving it to the left until you can see something like frame 1 and frame 600 here. Let's go to file, save as, and we're going to make a second version, so we'll save it as version 2. Let's click save, and now we want to try and fly this camera through this scene. So let's see, we'll probably zoom in a little bit here actually, and we'll drag across because we want to get closer to our time frames, right? So you want to see like your time frames like this, something like this. So the first thing we'll do is click on the camera, and we'll click on record button, and we'll move to the center of the screen here and press the letter I, and we're going to insert a location and rotation here. So what we'll do is move our timeline forward. In fact, the smart thing for us to do is go all the way. Let's move across here. Let's go all the way down to, let's say 10 seconds is going to be quite long, right? So let's set it to around 4. Let's do some maths here. So we've got 600 frames, and we'll divide that by 60 frames a second. That gives us 10 seconds. So we want, let's see, we want around 7 seconds to get from here to the end. So we do 7 times 60 gives us 420. So we want to be on 420 here. So that will be 7 seconds from the beginning to here. And all we're going to do is press number 7. Let's see, yeah, let's do it this way. Let me show you how to do this. So let's press number 7, and you're going to see some weird thing going on here. What we're going to do is hide this sphere. Let's call this let's give this a proper name, right? It's called sphere at the moment, but we want to call it let's call it background for now. So let's hide it, and when we hide it we're able to see our scene here, and our camera is right down here somewhere. So let's click on the camera again. Let's see, where is it? It should be here somewhere. It's pretty hard to see. It should be down here, right down here. We need to turn on the overlays here. Click it so that you can see where the camera is. It's right here. And all we want to do is, let's see, we want to move it on the y-axis, right? So we want to move that tiny little yellow dot here. It's on frame 1 at the moment. We're on frame 420. We want to move it to around here where my mouse is right now. So we use the y-axis, and we need to move it this direction. So you can see the little yellow dot moving across the screen. We're going to keep moving it until it gets to somewhere around here. Then we'll press this key here. That takes us back to the first frame. We'll untick, in fact we'll leave the record button on for now. In fact we should untick it. When we're not using it we should always untick it, because it can cause problems otherwise. You click things and you start doing stuff and it's recording what you're doing and you don't really want it to do that. So my kind of golden rule is untick the record button until you want to use it again. So let's press 0. That takes us back into the front view, and then we'll turn back on our background so we see it like this. And then let's rotate this mouse wheel so we can see from frame 1 to frame 600 here, and we'll right click here and just drag across, and we kind of get an idea of this camera flying through, and it's going to get to here, right? Now we need to just dodge around these obstacles because we just don't want to fly through them like this. It's just looking a bit rubbish. So let's rotate our mouse wheel to zoom back in again, and we'll scrub across here. And the first thing we need to do is get around this object, right? So we've got 420 frames to play with. So let's think about this, right? We'll hit the record button, and really, let's say around frame 50. So we'll click on frame 50, we can see. In fact, really what you should do is just use your mouse, right click here and move until you get close to this object here, right? The one that's in front of you. Your one might not be immediately in front of you. Your one might be further down. So you want to move across the timeline until you get to some obstacle in front of you, like this. Then what we'll do here is, let's see, you need to make sure the record button is on. And really what I want to do is move to like frame, let's see, frame 30, and then just move here and press I to insert a location and rotation here. So between these two distances, the camera is just moving forward straight. Then it's going to get to frame 50, and on frame 50, I want to rotate the camera this way on the y-axis, and then move it on the x across here. So we've got this gap to fly through. So if we go back to frame 1, it's going to be straight here, then it's going to swerve like this, right? And then we want to move forward to get past that object to around frame 90. And on frame 90, we want to set the Y back to 0. So it's flat again. And that's pretty much all we need to do, right? So the camera is going to go here, it's going to swerve to the side and then flatten out again. And then we've kind of got a clear path here. But let's get to like frame 140. And we'll move it on the y-axis again. Let's move it towards the center here, like this. And then we've got an object in front of us, and we're going to work out what we're going to do when we get close to it. So on this frame, around frame 165, I'm going to move to here and press I, insert location and rotation. So if we go back to the first frame, the camera will swerve this way, then flatten out, and now it's going to hit this object here, right? So let's get to around this frame, and we'll rotate the camera slightly this way and move it on the X this way. So let's see what that looks like now. So it's going to move here, and I think around on this frame, really I want to move the camera back, let's say this way slightly. You can really play around with this, right? Probably will move this a bit closer this way. So you can actually click on these keyframes, left click on them and move them. So here you can see it's clearly hitting this object. So let's go to the Y, the X, and move it across. In this keyframe, we can right click it, this one, click it, and then delete it. I don't need that one. We can click it, hit the delete key and say delete keyframe. So let's see. So really on this keyframe here, we want to set the Y to 0. So it's flattened out, right? And on this keyframe, we need to hit the record button here, right? Make sure the record is on. I've turned it off for some reason. So let's see. This here is just not right, is it? It just moves to like So maybe on this frame here, I don't want it to twist so much. So let's click on that keyframe and we'll rotate it back a bit more, because it's just too much angle, I think. Doesn't look right. So that might be better. And then it's rotating here, right? So on this keyframe here, we want to rotate it back a bit. In fact, let's just set it to 0. And we can tidy this up a little bit, improve it. And now we've got a choice here. That gap looks a bit small, so we're probably going to have to fly over this, right? So on this keyframe, this one, in fact on this keyframe, let's move it on the y-axis, no, not on the y, on the z-axis, let's move it up. And then we'll move it on the x-axis across a bit so we can fly through this gap. So let's see what that looks like. So here, see the camera is already rising at this point. So at this point here, we want to bring this camera down. We don't want it so high. So all of this, the camera is quite low. And on this frame, it's going to start to rise up. And probably even on this frame here, we can bring the camera down on the Z. It's quite close to the floor. Then it's going to fly over this. And then around here, we want it to fly back down, right? So on the Z axis, we'll bring it back down. I want it to be quite close to the floor here. And then it's going to fly through here. And we've got some obstacle here, right? So let's get to frame 250. Let's just undo that. So on frame 250, move up to this location rotation here and just press the letter I. And that will insert a keyframe for these particular coordinates, right? So between here and here, it's just going to fly straight. Then it's going to get to around here. Let's see, here. Then on frame 270 here, we want to move it on the z-axis this way, right? Like this. And then on this frame here, so it's inside the object, we want to move it on the z-axis this way. So on this frame here, we want to rotate the camera just slightly this way. So the camera is slightly rotating that way, and then we want to rotate it back the other direction, this way. So it looks like it's almost swerving around these things, right? Then on this one here, we'll set the rotation. So click the letter I here, and then set this to 0, so it's flat. And then click the letter I here as well. So press the letter I over here, and then on the z-axis we want to bring it up. It flies over that. Then we're into our final scene here, right? So probably what we'll do here is get the camera to around this position. So press the letter I here and the letter I here, and then move a few frames forward to about here, so you're almost inside this object. Let's grab it on the Z, so press the letter I here and here. Then on the Z axis we want to move it up, and then we want to, let's try and rotate this camera and then move it on the Z axis, so it's got this space here to fly through. So it's going to fly through here. then we're almost done on our frame. So let's get across here, and on frame 380, I think what we'll do is press the letter I here and the letter I here, set the Y to 0, and then the Z, not the Z, the Z axis, will bring it down again to get it close to the floor. And I think we're about done with this. So the only way to really test it now is let's just roll our mouse wheel out so we can see all the keyframes, hit the record button, and then just hit the space bar basically, and it will play through this. So I think that beginning part, I don't like it. It just moves too fast, that camera part. But you can get an idea of what this fly through will look like. So I think most of this is pretty good. Yeah, I think that's all good. The only bit I really don't like is this beginning bit where it swerves so dramatically there, right? So what we might do, we've got a couple of options. Either we move the camera so it doesn't start here, or we change what that will looks like, right? So we click the record button. We know it's on this frame here. It gets close, right? And then it just does this. Between these two frames, it's just too much. For me, it's just too much movement here. So the option is, let's click on this keyframe here and then hit the delete key and delete that keyframe. So now it's just going to fly through this object, right? So when it gets to this keyframe here, press the letter I here and press the letter I here, and then on the Z axis I'm going to move it up to somewhere like here and just move it across a little bit, and probably on the Y I'm going to flatten it out. So now it will just fly over this like this. I prefer that. I think that looks much better, right? So you've got to experiment. Nothing's always perfect first time around. If we press 0, not 0, press 0 one more time, press the space bar, we'll fly through this one more time. And we'll get to this sort of end keyframe here. Normally on the end frame, let's just go to File, Save As, and let's save this as version 3. And then press F12 to render. And we'll kind of get an idea of what the end part is going to look like. And then we can do some more work here. We're going to add some probably fluid dynamics. I think we might make some more of these sort of objects and have them come out of the ground, like they're growing out of the ground, something like this. Maybe we'll do something like that. It will look pretty cool. You should really experiment now. Move across your timeline, get to something like this and press F12, see what it looks like. I think it looks pretty cool. And we'll go back to the first frame. And I think we're pretty much done with this flyover. You can tweak it, you can, you know, spend a lot of time just playing around with this and experimenting. This is really down to you. But I quite like what this is looking like. I think it's pretty good. Let's just press F12 here. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good for me. So I'm going to go to File, Save. And that's the end of this part of the tutorial. We wanted to do this little fly through. We've done this. So in the next tutorial, we're going to create some more of these, like, what we call them, like shards or mountains or something like this. And I want them to come out of the ground. So we're going to need to create another object, create those, and then have them come sort of flowing out of the ground, pushing up from the ground. And then we need to create some sort of fluid dynamic, some sort of water coming out of the ground or some sort of metal, something like this. And then we'll create the text that comes out of this metal fluid. And then we'll be pretty much done, I think. Then you can just tweak and experiment. We might play around with the lighting through this. We might add some lighting as well, just to see what it looks like. And then we'll be pretty much done. Let's go to File, Save. I'll close this for now. And I look forward to seeing you in the next part of this tutorial.